Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Thrive with Ina podcast. We are coming on with another amazing episode today. And on today's podcast, we have an incredible guest, Tracy Kessler. Tracy is the founder of TK New York and Kindness Grows Here movement. And we are super excited to dive into her story, how she got started in both of those adventures and all of the other things that grew out of those adventures. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, Ina. I'm so happy to be here. I feel so excited to talk about my career and just my path. And, I'm always passionate about everything I talk about.
Everything. I was just gonna say that's the one thing we share, that we are passionate about everything we do. We just
Yes.
dive straight in.
Are you a Scorpio too? Because that's
My moon sign is Scorpio. I'm a
okay.
Leo with a Scorpio moon and Sagittarius rising. So everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We love doing things. Well, I am so excited to learn about your journey and learn everything about your business that not many people that follow you on Instagram actually know what you
Right.
do on just such a huge scale. At TK New York, we know you as a local entrepreneur and a blogger and public speaker and activist and all the things on the North Fork. But I'm really excited to dive in and learn that story about you. How did you get started in TK New York and what that is?
I love telling my story. And it is interesting because how I got started in events does kind of tie back to Kindness Grows Here. I went to the University of Rhode Island. I majored in marketing. Back then, there was no events major. I love that there's an events major now, and actually, it's one of my life goals to maybe teach a course, a college course, or do something like that, and kind of help people learn to do an actual event. Um, so when I got out of college, I was like, what do you do with a marketing degree? There was way too many choices. I went into corporate America. I was thriving there. And I remember this moment where I looked at the president of the company and I thought, I could be that in about 4 years, but I don't want to be. And I realized, okay, I need to switch gears here. I need to figure out what I want to do with my life. So what I did is I volunteered at about 10 different organizations because I was taught that to find your own happiness, you lift others up.
Mm.
So I did a bunch of different things. I worked at, soup kitchens. I tutored underprivileged kids in lower Manhattan. And I worked at the Revlon Run Walk for Women, which, if you don't know, that's a 5K run to raise money for women's cancers. And it also kind of, it was out of convenience. Their office happened to be across the street from my corporate office in Rockefeller Center. And so I started volunteering there, and I went there once a week on my lunch breaks. I did everything from answering the phone to counting, donations that came in. And eventually I became the head of all of their volunteers.
Wow.
And I realized I love this. I want to do this. But the organization that was running the run walk, that was organizing it, they were a very small outfit and they didn't have any employment opportunities. So in the interim, I just waited and waited and waited. And I volunteered for them, I want to say, for almost like 3 or 4 years. And eventually they offered me a job. And I remember so distinctly sitting in my apartment in Hoboken, calling my mom to tell her that I was leaving corporate America. And I look back, I worked from 8 to 4. That was my shift at corporate America. And literally, like, if you were there at 4:30, people were like, "Why are you still here?" I look back and I go, "Wow, that was a perk I didn't know was a perk." Um, and I was leaving corporate America. I was taking a huge pay cut. The company I was going to didn't even have medical benefits. And my mom was going like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And I just said, "Mom, this is it. I know this is it. I feel it in my gut. I feel it so strongly. This is what I was meant to do." And so I worked at that company for 5 years. I became the vice president of that company within 1 year.
Wow.
So, in addition to the Revlon Run Walk for Women, we started the Voodoo Music Festival. And the owner of that company, Steve Rehaj, he had a method of teaching people, which was literally initiation by fire. I will never forget standing in the middle of Times Square. We would shut down Times Square from fifth, I think it was like 45th to 39th. And we would sync up all of the screens in Times Square to what our stage program was.
Wow.
And about, I don't know, the day before we were having our show, Steve says, "You're calling the show, Tracy." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to, what are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yes, you can. You know how to do this. Just do it." And I did it. And I called a show that it was incredible. It was the greatest rush. It was so cool to see this show that I was producing up on all these screens. Um, and that was like, it just, all of these experiences just really got me. And after about 5 years at that company, and I was managing the Voodoo Music Festival was 3 days in New Orleans. I got to live there for about 2 months when we were planning it. It was in the middle of the city park, and I produced everybody from Eminem to John Mayer to LL Cool J to Marilyn Manson to, I mean, just lists and lists and lists of artists. And I'm a huge music buff. And I remember standing on the stage, and Green Day and Beastie Boys were playing, two of my favorites. And I was standing up on the stage, and I like looked down from the VIP area, and I was like, I can I curse on this? Because I remember at that moment I said, I fucking did this. I fucking did this. I looked out at a crowd of over 100,000 people, and I was like, I did this. I can't believe I did this. It's just such an amazing feeling to see. One of the things I love the most about events is you work so long and hard. Most people think events is just what you see, like the fun, glamorous
Oh yeah.
celebrity part, right? No, it is hours and hours and hours of emails and Zoom calls and spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And but then you get to see your work come to life, and you get to see people enjoy your work. And that is what I love the most. It is so cool. And then what's also great is that then everything changes. So once you've reached that point where you're like, I'm gonna, scream, I'm so fed up with this one particular situation, it's over. And then you go on to the next event. And by the time you come back to that event the next year, you're like, oh, I love this event. You forget all the things that were
Yeah.
that were giving you agita. And
Yeah, if
yeah,
you don't know the event planning world, then you just don't know. I've worked in catering industry for I don't know, 12 years, for a very long time, and all the work that goes into setting up those events,
yes,
it is by far the most unseen layer
yeah,
of entrepreneurship, is because people see the end results of the baby that you produced, that you birthed,
yeah,
really, and they don't know the hours, the days, the months of negotiations and mathematics
yeah,
and spreadsheets, that all the things that you have to work on, coordination that goes into producing it. And yeah, so unless you know, you don't know. For those of you who did not
yeah.
pick up yet on what TK New York is, TK New York is a massive event planning and coordination company. Tracy, tell us a little bit about what is the biggest event to date that you've produced?
Oh my God, that's a really hard question.
They're all big.
Well, because they're all big in different ways, right? So, I mean, I right now currently for the last, I think it's 14 years. I don't know how many years I've been doing it. The New York City Wine and Food Festival. So that is an enormous event that happens every October, and I started working on this year's event, which is coming up in a couple of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
in December. That's how long we work on this event, and it is massive, and it is multiple days. So in terms of scale, that's huge, right? But then there are things like I traveled with the Super Bowl for 10 years and produced the Maxim Super Bowl party, which was the hottest ticket of the entire. People used to fly into where the Super Bowl was, not to go to the Super Bowl, but to go to our party. And it was that was a massive undertaking too. I mean, it was huge, but it was a 5-hour party, and it was only for about 3,000 people, but um, it was, I mean, people used to try to bribe us, and it was incredible. And we were allowed to be so creative, and we created, I remember my very first one, we were in Detroit, and we took over the Detroit Symphony Orchestra Hall. So picture like if you're in New York, or picture like Radio City, and we decked over all the seats. So the floor of the party was on top of the seats, but you didn't know it because you just walked in. And we had planned out a rock opera. So we wrote an entire rock opera, and we had moments happening all over the place. We had like a gospel choir come down the stairs. We had Wyclef Jean like up in the balcony, and he actually like dove into the crowd. I mean, it was just, and year after year after year, we would come up with a brainchild of something so completely different, you know?
Tell me
I produced,
how intensive it is in like team building, from a perspective of an entrepreneur. You have to have a reliable team to create all this magic, right?
absolutely.
Like you have an idea, and that idea cannot come to life without a reliable team. Tell me a little bit about your team, how through the years that's evolved. How do you pick your people? How do you grow your people? How do you support your people so they can support you back in creation of these events?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, Nina, because I have, this kind of leads into kindness grows here. I have realized that while I am an excellent event producer, I am even a better manager. I am better at looking at someone and identifying what they would be really good at, what their strong suit is, and then pairing them up with the right people. And it's not like this is a skill that I tried to figure out. It's just sort of looking back over I've personally been in business for 20 years. January will be 20 years. And I was with that other event company for 5 years. So I've been doing this for 25 years. And the teams that I have been put together, we call ourselves Team TKNY because we are like a family. Um, and I feel like I have all these children that I've raised. I have so many people who've worked for me who have never done events before, but I'm like, you would be so good at this. Would you be willing to take vacation and come try this? So I've had people that I've literally pulled from their career, people who were lawyers, people who were architects, and brought them to the event industry because I saw that they would be so good at this, and I have them work for me. And then if you're already in events and you want to work for me, I always say you have to work one of my events. Like you have to volunteer for one of my events
You're
because I need
making
to.
me want to apply for the next food festival.
It's just, and our team is so, I mean, I'm so focused on positivity. I'm always talking about communication, clear communication. I mean, events gets intense.
Yeah.
It gets really intense, right? And so as humans, we tend to want to like deflect responsibility. That's not my fault. And, I'm always kind of there to remind my team we're all on the same team. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. This is what happened. How do we fix it together? Let's
Yeah.
try to fix it together. I put up signs all over our production offices like positivity matters. I do morning meditations sometimes on site. I'll always try to do something nice for my team, like I'll bring in a chair massage therapist. Or one year I let everyone get their nails done. I had someone come in and do nails. Um,
I love that.
just to kind of like, because it's when you're on site, I mean, I almost liken it to being at camp, or because you're together for this extensive period of time, 5 to 12 days, depends on what you're doing. And you're there from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, and sometimes you're in the elements. It's raining, it's 100 degrees, it's I mean, whatever it is, you are tired.
Yeah.
So you can either go in the direction and start alienating everyone around you, which isn't going to get anything done, or you can turn towards each other and say, let's support each other through this. So, like, we have a rule on our site: no one leaves until everyone leaves. So even if your special area, so we have a team of probably about 50 people, and not including like the hired union labor and such, that work on the food festival. And I say, like, We have a 6 o'clock meeting every night. Everybody weighs in. Where are you? What do you need help with? Okay, if you're done with your thing, you go help him. You go, like, we all want to get out of here. So nobody's staying until midnight while the rest of us leave at 7.
Yeah.
We're all going to leave together at 8:30, and I feel like, I don't know, that mentality and providing that environment for people to work in. I have people who continually will come back and say, "I will always prioritize your events, Tracy. I will always work. I'm always team TKNY. It doesn't matter who I'm working for. I'm always team TKNY."
I love
And
that.
that to me is more important than any event I've ever done.
I love that. It really is important. I've worked for so many different events where the leadership was toxic and
Mm, yeah.
unsupportive, and the team would fall apart 20 minutes into the event because we had
Yeah.
no support.
Yeah.
Leadership support when it comes to event managing and organizing is the most important thing.
Yeah. And, not to get into too granular of events, but I think one of the important things that I've identified is that when on site, and clients sometimes have a hard time with this, you have to kind of like show them or lead them, but I cannot have any actual responsibility, right? Because if I'm responsible for, let's just say, putting out the tables or doing, putting out the florals, then I can't help fix a problem.
Yeah.
I can't oversee what everyone else is doing. And I'm stressed about what I'm doing. So I actually, I always say to clients or sponsors, if you see me come out of my office, we've reached DEFCON 5. Like, I have layers and layers and layers of people. And when it gets to me, it should never have to get to me. But if it does, we've reached the top level of an emergency. Um, and so most of the time, frankly, on site, I'm sitting in my office. People will call me and say, like, can you come out and just put eyes on this? And I'll come out. But like I said, a lot of times on site, I'm the one who's like team building and cheering everyone on and making sure everyone's taken care of, because I'm here to support them so that they can do the best job that they can do.
That's amazing. Event planning and building and organizing is such a tremendous responsibility, and so is taking on the entire team and their needs and supporting them. How do you support yourself? How do you? I just want to hear all about how Tracy takes care of Tracy so she can go and support on her team of 50 plus whatever people that you have.
Yes.
Tell me about the back end of self-care that helps you thrive as an entrepreneur.
Well, as you know from my Instagram and stuff, I love exercising. It's really important to me to get that in as much as possible,
And that's
move
how
my
we met.
body.
I remember that you came to my yoga class at the beach and
Yes.
didn't tell me you were pregnant.
I know. I don't think it was public knowledge then.
No, but the
Yeah.
yoga teacher is the first one to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I love mixing it up. Sometimes I'm doing kickboxing and sometimes I'm doing yoga and sometimes I'm paddleboarding. It's just getting outside and moving. And then another thing that I'm not really shy about is, I'm 14 years in recovery, and to me the work that I do in recovery is what makes me who I am. I meditate daily. I pray. And to me, the difference between praying and meditating, praying is talking to God and meditating is listening to God. And I think both of those are equally as important. And I wake up, it's my goal to wake up every day to figure out just some small way where I can be a better individual than I was the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And taking the times that I need to do that. And it's interesting because you mentioned being pregnant. So I have a 2.5-year-old, and I had her by myself at 46 years old. So definitely not the traditional path for most people, but and really, as a entrepreneur and a business owner, kind of a crazy thing to take on, but I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit too. It's just like, I will do it and I'll figure it out and I'll get it done, and I'm doing it. But one of the things that she has forced me to do is stop working at the time the babysitter leaves, right? Like I used to be someone who would work until 8, 9 o'clock just because I was like, I just want to get it done. I don't want to hang it over my head. Now I can't. Now it's like the babysitter's leaving, the computer shuts, and I am a mom. And that has actually been good for me. That has been great for me because that time that I spend with her from when I end work to her going to bed is really all her. It's time for us to be together. And that's been great for me. And the other thing is, currently right now I am working after she goes to bed, but for the most part during the year, unless we're in the last run towards an event, I'm not working after she goes to bed. That's my time. That's my time.
I love that.
So, yeah, so she's really forced me to kind of say, you know, I'm going to let others do.
Yeah.
I'm going to lead and I'm going to let others do.
I love that. How many years did it take you to build solid boundaries between work and your personal time?
A very long time. And I will tell you, it took culling the clients that did not respect those boundaries out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when you identify a client that is changing those boundaries, it's a very scary thing to do. As a business owner, you're responsible for the financial security of not only yourself but many others. So you can't just willy-nilly go like, I'm not working for these people anymore, right? But you do also have to identify when a client is going over those boundaries, and you either reset the boundaries or you decide I'm not going to work with this client anymore because they continually cross these boundaries. And I found some amazing people to work for, and I look to grow within those relationships rather than I've never ever ever reached out for business.
Hmm.
Business has always come to me. Every job I've ever had, I can trace back to the first one. Whether it's a client referred me, whether someone I worked alongside with, said, oh, I'm working on this project, come over here, or a client moved to another job and took me over there. And I think that again speaks back to what we were talking about of the type of employee, the type of client, the type of vendor that you want to be in any business. I mean, I can absolutely tell you there are people who used to work for me that I work for now, and vice versa.
Awesome.
So that importance of treating everybody with the same level of respect, no matter who they are. I mean, I hate to even say that sentence of like, you never know who you're going to be working for, because that creates an alternative motive for being that way. I think you should just be that way anyway.
Yeah.
But truthfully, you never know who you're going to be working for. So you really better be careful.
Yeah, and I think this is a great segue into talking about the movement that you started. Um, Kindness Grows Here, and I want to learn about it myself because I actually did not know about it until recently. And I know that you do also public speaking. And
Yes.
when do you, first of all, find time for all of this? Second of all, um, I know we find time when it's important to us, right? We really put effort into finding that time for important
Yes.
things. So tell us a little bit about that movement, and it clearly reads through the entirety of your um, life and business. So tell us about it.
Well, it's really interesting because during the pandemic, as with many other businesses, events completely shut down. I mean, yes, I was doing virtual blanket making. I mean, I actually learned how to pivot way more than I ever had during that time. I mean, I was teaching people how to make chunky blankets over Zoom. I created a partnership with Grace and Grit and a few other vendors where I did date nights where I would deliver food, like a 4-course meal, dessert, flowers. I made a personal Spotify playlist, candles, and I packaged it all up really pretty. And I would leave it at your door, because this was back when like people wouldn't even open the door for delivery people. And I would put it on your door, and then I'd back up and I'd text you, and I would give you your date night at home. And I mean, I was like anything I could come up with. But one of the things I did, so I'm a doer,
I'm
And
here.
when and when the pandemic first started, I was actually prompted by the Southold Mothers Club. They had reached out to me and said, like, would you put a rainbow in your window? It was some sort of thing they were doing with the kids. And so, of course, me being me and being extra, I don't just put like a rainbow. I decide to cut 60 hearts out of colored paper and put them in my window of all the rainbow colors. And all my neighbors here were going like, "Oh my God, that made me so happy. It just lifted my spirits. I'm so glad you did that." So then I go, okay. So I started cutting out, I probably cut out over 100,000 hearts. I hand cut 60 hearts per person, and I put out a thing on Instagram, and I said anywhere in the country, but we did focus mostly on the North Fork. If you would like to put this in your window, I will send it to you. It's free. I If you would like to, you could donate. But and what I did is I used that to raise money, and I took that money and I purchased food from local North Fork restaurants so that they got some money,
Hmm.
and then I delivered it to the hospital workers.
Oh,
And I was able to A, give myself something to do and have a purpose. B, all of these people, I mean, people were like all over the North Fork had these hearts in their windows. And other people would text me, be like, "I just drove past a house that had the hearts." And it was such a great thing to become a part of. And during that time, I didn't have events to plan. So I started to really go like, who am I if I'm not? And I wasn't a mom at the time, right?
hmm.
Not a wife. I'm not a mom. I'm currently not an event planner. Who am I? And I really started to focus in on the way that I choose to live my life and the principles that I embody, and how do I share that with others. Because as you know, on Instagram, I have this ability to be vulnerable that most people don't. It's not like something I curated, it just happened. I think it's because of my being in the rooms of recovery. It's a safe place, and a lot of people share very personal things in there and things they're struggling with. So it's a skill that I picked up in the rooms, and I'm willing and able to do that to a larger scale. And what I noticed through Instagram and the power of social media is that people were reaching out to me saying, like, you are giving me hope. People have had children on their own because I talk about having children on their own. People have gone into recovery or called me and said, "Can you call me? My brother's struggling. I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" I mean, people I've never met all across the country. And I realized that by sharing my mentality, my way of life, my approach to things, I was positively impacting people, and I wanted to do more of that. And what's really interesting is, this was also around the time of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, and things were changing, and I just was watching so much hate
Mm.
around the world, and it hurt. I've always been the type of person, for better or worse, who carries the weight of the world on me. um I always feel like I just, like, the despair that other people feel, I just want to help and I don't know how. And um I just kept promoting this, like, kindness matters, people, like, kindness matters. And people were reaching out about that too. So I started to say, like, okay, kindness grows here. Now, the way that actual statement came, oh my God, I wish I could remember her name right now. One of my followers was making terracotta pots with little fun sayings on them.
Okay.
And one, like, she had like, "You grow, girl," and
Yeah.
things like that, right? So she said, "Would you like one of my pots, or would you like to make your own?" And I was like, "No, I think I'd like to make my own." And I was like trying to come up with like a pun, and I was like, "Oh, kindness grows
Oh,
here,
I
let's
love
do
that.
that." So it was really related to plants, which I know is a passion of yours as well.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this little thing that I'm building here, kindness grows here. And then I just started to take it further. And I was like, okay, if you want to be a part of what I'm doing, why don't you be a kindness ambassador? And your job is to plant seeds of kindness everywhere you go. and they will grow. And the more people that plant it, the more kindness will grow throughout the world.
I
And
love that.
to be honest with you, beyond the concept, I don't know what it is. It's an interesting time to be in, as I'm sure you know, with a business where you're like, I have this idea. I have this fire in my belly. So I know it's real, but I have no idea what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what it is. I see a TED talk in my future. I see a book. I see a lot of things, but where I'm at right now is trusting the process.
Mm.
I'm talking about it. I'm putting it out there. I'm carving out space for it. And actually, I have a meeting with someone who's helping me with TK New York to kind of move it to a place where I could be a little bit less involved and really just be the figurehead and actually spend time on this
Ooh, I love
and
that.
figure out what it is.
I love that. I
So,
always ask people on my podcast as to give us a hint of what's to come in the future. And you just answered all my questions. You just gave us a hint.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
was the intention of founding TK New York to have it grow to the size that you could sell it, or you could? Was there an intention in the beginning, or is this something that you're just evolving it into?
No, it's interesting because the reason I started TK New York is because I realized that I could have a lot more freedom, both financially and time, if I was working for myself.
Mhm.
And essentially, I was running that other company. And I didn't actually just leave because of that. I also had decided that I wanted to do a different type of event than what we were doing. And I had proposed to the owner, actually, would he be willing to let me start a branch of his company? I would train everybody to do what I had been doing, but I wanted to do different type of events. And he just wasn't in the place to do that at that time. So I said, all right, I'm going to leave and I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I started with the idea, and I feel like to me this is how I would start any business, as if we have 100 employees. Like, even though I was the only employee for many years, we had healthcare, we had this, I had it set up so that once an employees started coming, they would be set up to be treated the way that I wanted them to be treated, and have the infrastructure there. I had an employee manual. I was the only employee, but I wrote an employee manual.
Love that.
But I remember, like, when I had went to this other small company and they didn't have one, I was like, we need an employee manual. I mean, people need to know what to do, right? So
Yeah, it's kind of
um
like wear the suit that you want, like wear the outfit for the job that
yes,
you want, not the job you have.
exactly. Exactly. So, now I don't know that I'm looking to sell TK New York, although under the right circumstances I certainly would. But I think it's more that the people that I've trained, the people that I've raised, it's really the right word. Um, I'm ready to start handing over some of the more responsibility to them,
Hmm.
and growing that group, growing that level of team that I can trust to turn things over to, so that I can truly just be the guiding force and spend a little bit more time pursuing this other passion, which I can absolutely tell you it's the same fire in my belly that I had when I quit my corporate job. So I know that this is next. I just don't know what it is yet.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure you're going to find it, and I'm sure we're going to be all fascinated reading your book very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about, all the events happen in big metropolitan areas, and you obviously have to commute there from where you live now. How was that moving from New York City to the North Fork, to a small place where you get to go home? And I know that you literally renovated the cottage you live in
Yes.
by hand. We've all watched that
Yes.
story online. How
Yes.
you just, I'm going to build a house
Yeah.
and move.
It's I had moved here after a very difficult divorce, and I it was supposed to be temporary.
Mhm.
This is my great grandmother's house. I'm sitting in the kitchen right now. It was all knotty pine. It was all very, very dark and frankly depressing for me at that time in my life. I was like, I cannot live in this darkness. I need light. Um, and so I just started painting and tiling. I learned how to tile, and I just replaced everything. I kept the charm. It's still very much like a tiny little beach cottage, but it's a calm, warm, loving environment now.
Yeah.
And when I made the choice to stay, I was kind of like, how on earth am I running a Manhattan based business from the North Fork? It's not easy. I found the Hampton Jitney. Let me tell you, that changed things big time because driving to Ronkonkoma to take the train, it's like I have to drive an hour, then get on the train for an hour, then get on the wherever you're going into the city. The jitney, if ugh, it's the best. I love it. But, I also again started to say to my clients, okay, if you want to work with me, this is what we're going to do. Most of our meetings are going to be virtual. I will come in when it's absolutely necessary. And and then, a lot of our events are in San Francisco, Chicago, wherever. So, I travel and that's been interesting with my child. But I also have really supportive clients. I mean, many of my clients, Tilly has come to many of our events. She's on site at Food Festival for a couple days. She's, my the Asian American Foundation that I work for, they for the first 6 months of Tilly's life, they allowed me to bring my nanny on site and bring Tilly and have her with me because I was breastfeeding. And I mean, they were so like I had built this reputation in the industry that they were like, we want to support you. You've always supported us. We want to support you. How do we support you to do the best job that you can do?
See, and the kindness does grow here.
Yeah, it
Boom,
does.
boom, boom, boom. Drum roll, everyone.
Yes. Yes, it does.
It really
Yeah.
pays back, and it's such a old school thing that back in the day people believed that kindness doesn't get you ahead.
Yes.
That you have to be cutthroat, that the only way to grow and make something of yourself is to be cutthroat and step over other people. And that is just so untrue. And I love that you're bringing kindness
So untrue.
how you
I know.
run your business and how your clients are valuing you as a person, not just as a um,
Yeah.
performer at your job and at your business. And I love that you are integrating your own beliefs into how you are running your business, and successfully so. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say I am debunking that nice guys finish last.
Yep.
I am debunking that because it's not true. It's just not true.
Yeah.
In fact, I would argue quite the opposite. That it may appear that someone who's cutthroat is ahead, but in the end, it's the nice guys who win.
The time always shows the truth of the poker face, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
does. It does. I love that. And to make a segue into your podcast, which we haven't even talked about. I
Yeah.
know that I was interviewed on it a couple of years back, and you continue going it with it and growing with
I
it.
can't believe that I do actually.
Oh, I know.
I know.
Everyone, Tracy also has a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we live in a place called the North Fork, and the shorthand is NOFO. And a girlfriend of mine had reached out, and another girl actually. We had said like, let's start. It was back when Clubhouse was a big thing, so we were going to start a Clubhouse room, and then we said, well, we already have Instagram followers, so let's start whatever this is on Instagram first. And it turned out that we came up with a format and we said we're going to have like a fourth square. It's like the Hollywood squares. We're going to have the fourth square on every week, and we're just going to use this platform to build our own community. That's really what it was, because the three of us were, transplants here, and first generation North Forkers, and we wanted to meet more people. So we were like, well, let's do it in a way that allows these people to grow their own community. So we formed NoFo Live, and it's we're going into our fourth season.
Wow,
It's
I love it.
crazy, so crazy, and it is every Friday at 9. And I think I only took 2 weeks off of maternity leave from NoFo Live. Like, there were some interviews where I was actually breastfeeding, but you couldn't tell because the camera was up here.
I'm in labor, but I can still
Yeah,
interview.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it has been such an incredible thing that we've built. And Sunita Narma, who's my co-host and founder, and she does, especially now with Tilly and everything, she does the brunt of the work. She books all the guests, she does all the posting and everything, and together we build the brand. And it's such a wonderful thing that we've done here. And we have our celebratory, anniversary party every year in May, and it's just really cool to look back and see what we've done and all these people that we've met. And it's now starting to where like we'll go to a public event and people will be like, oh my gosh, it's you.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love all the things you're doing, which so many things you're doing. And a lot of people ask me, and we're very similar in this sense that we're doing all the things and we love
Yeah.
all the things we're doing. People always ask me, how do you have the time, how do you have the energy? And I love that you and I can relate on that level of having
Yeah.
so many different interests, but also loving all of them and doing all of them, and not necessarily monetizing on all of them, because some things just bring you purpose and fulfillment
Yeah.
and connection and creates friendships. Like the podcast is probably one of my most favorite things of all that I'm doing, because I get to chat with people that I wouldn't actually learn on such a deep level about. Like you and I see
Yeah.
each other often, but when am I going to sit down with you for an hour and ask about how you got started in TK New York and things like that? You know what I mean? So that's a really
Yeah.
special connection. I think podcasts bring in that element of the depth of connection.
Yes. I was just going to say, you get to get deeper
Yeah,
than, yeah.
I love that. So to close off the podcast, can you give listeners a little bit of an advice of whatever advice that you think that you can give from the entrepreneurial perspective or from human perspective or from kindness perspective?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll do all of that. I
Love
mean,
it.
I think follow your gut. Your gut isn't wrong. Right? Because I think when I made that decision to leave corporate America and go into events, and when I'm now making this decision to explore things that might take me a little bit further away from events, I feel it in my body. I feel it. So follow your gut, because your gut is right, even though those might be the scary choices. Always move forward with kindness. It's number one rule. And for me, number two rule is really to be organized. I mean, what people don't understand about events and event production is you're making plan A, you're also making plan B, but your main job is to come up with plan C on the fly. But you can do that if plan A and B are so solidified that you wouldn't even need to be there to execute them.
Mm.
So I would say that that applies to anything, right? Any kind of goal you have. It's all about getting organized and taking one little step at a time. It's similar to what I said about how I live my life, where I wake up every day and I want to become just a tiny bit better version of the person I was the day yesterday. That can apply to your goals in business as well. Just what are you going to do today? Don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about the long-term goal. Don't think about anything. What are you doing today to get you closer to where that goal is? And then what's really important is being open for it to take you somewhere different than you thought. Because if you keep focusing on where you think it's supposed to go, you might miss the door to something really amazing.
Wow, I have goosebumps. I love this so much. This is
Yeah.
such a great advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's tell
Thank
the
you for having
listeners, of
me.
course, let's tell the listeners where they can follow you. What's your Instagram handle, and how can they support you?
So my Instagram handle is at ms.tracykessler for all my personal stuff. And then for my business, it's at TK New York. So you can follow me there. And I have a website for both of those. So website to join Kindness Grows Here and become a kindness ambassador, you can go to tracykessler.com and sign up there. And I will fully admit that I have an email list that you sign up for, and I have not yet sent one single email. But like we said, tiny steps, baby steps. And you can also check us out over at tknewyork.com.
Awesome. And at the next Food and Wine Festival in New York City, because
Yes,
that one,
and follow NoFo Live and join in every Friday morning on NoFo Live. Yeah.
Yeah, great podcast to listen to. I love it. I love being interviewed on it. It was really cool. Thank you
Well, we have
so
to get
much.
you back now.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, so much has changed that I
I
don't
know.
even know
I
where to
know.
start. Yeah, so thank you again so much for coming on to Thrive with Ina podcast. I loved having you here today. Guys, you're listening today. Please like, share, comment, send this episode to your friends who can learn something. Get in touch with Tracy if you have any questions. Follow her story, look at her stories, support her public crying because I love it. I love it. I have a sweatshirt that I started being comfortable with public display of emotion a couple of years back, which I was never able to do. And one of my employees was so touched that she got me a sweatshirt for Christmas that says, I cried today.
Yeah.
Be known for the crying girl.
Yes.
Totally relate on that level too. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Nina. It was wonderful to talk to you in depth, and I can't wait to see you in person,
Yeah,
I guess.
can't wait to see you. And yeah, thank you guys. Please share. This is how we grow this podcast and share all the Tracy's events and podcast recordings as well. So I'm looking forward to posting these for everyone to learn your story.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone.